In the cold silence of deep space, a massive alien ship drifted silently among the stars. Its sleek, dark surface absorbed light, making it nearly invisible against the endless void. Inside, the crew moved with purpose, their insect-like bodies clicking softly as they worked. This was the Vortex, a vessel sent on a mission to explore the universe and secure resources for their dying planet. Among them was Captain Kale, a tall, imposing figure with glowing green eyes that reflected both wisdom and weariness. On this particular day, something unusual caught their attention. A faint signal pulsed through the vast emptiness of space. A human spacecraft, far from its home planet. The humans were an odd species, full of curiosity and unpredictability, but also fragile compared to the advanced beings aboard the Vortex. Still, the crew couldn't resist the opportunity to study one up close. After all, knowledge was power, and understanding these creatures might prove useful in the future. Captain Kale gave the order, his voice calm yet firm. "Bring one aboard," he said, his telepathic words echoing in the minds of his crew. Without hesitation, the aliens activated their teleportation device, a shimmering beam reaching out across the distance to snatch the unsuspecting human from their ship. Within seconds, the target materialized in a containment chamber aboard the Vortex. The process was quick, efficient, and completely silent. The captured human was a young woman named Emily Carter. She had been part of a small exploration team sent to chart uncharted regions of space. Her short brown hair clung to her forehead, damp with sweat, and her wide blue eyes darted around the strange room where she now found herself. At first, she thought it was some kind of malfunction or dream. But when she realized she wasn't alone, panic set in. Two figures entered the chamber, Zin and Rax, members of the alien crew. Zin was younger, with a slightly softer demeanor, while Rax was older, his movements sharp and deliberate. They didn't speak aloud. Instead, their thoughts pressed into Emily's mind like whispers. "Who are you?" they asked, their tone curious but detached. Emily struggled to breathe, her chest rising and falling rapidly. She opened her mouth to respond but could only manage a shaky, "I'm Emily." Her voice sounded weak even to her own ears. The aliens tilted their heads, studying her closely. Their large, multifaceted eyes scanned every detail of her face, her body language, and the way her hands trembled at her sides. "What is your purpose here?" Rax questioned next, his mental voice colder than Zin's. Emily swallowed hard, trying to gather her thoughts. "We're explorers," she finally managed to say. "We came to see what's out there." This answer seemed to confuse the aliens. Exploration for no clear reason wasn't something they understood. Back on their planet, actions always had a purpose: survival, progress, dominance. To waste time and energy simply to look around seemed inefficient. As the interrogation continued, Emily noticed how different they were from anything she'd ever imagined. Their exoskeletons gleamed faintly under the dim lights, and their limbs moved with precision. Yet, despite their intimidating appearance, she sensed a flicker of curiosity in their gaze. Maybe, just maybe, they weren't so different after all. In the control room, Captain Kale watched the scene unfold on a monitor. His expression remained unreadable, though a hint of unease lingered in his glowing eyes. Little did he know, capturing this human would change everything, for better or worse. Emily sat on the cold, metallic floor of the containment chamber, her mind racing as she tried to make sense of what had happened. The room was small and bare, with no windows or furniture, just smooth walls that seemed to hum faintly. She hugged her knees to her chest, trying to steady her breathing. Every time the door opened, her heart skipped a beat. The aliens were unlike anything she'd ever seen in books or movies. Their towering forms, sharp limbs, and glowing eyes made them seem almost unreal. Zin and Rax returned after a while, their movements deliberate and silent. Zin carried a tray with strange, gel-like substances arranged neatly on its surface. He placed it down near Emily and stepped back, watching her closely. "Eat," his thoughts pressed into her mind, gentle but firm. Emily hesitated, staring at the unfamiliar food. It didn't look edible, let alone appetizing. But hunger eventually outweighed her fear, and she reached out cautiously, picking up a small piece. It felt cool and slightly sticky in her hand. She took a tiny bite, expecting the worst. To her surprise, the gel melted instantly in her mouth, tasting faintly sweet and refreshing. Her eyes widened in shock, and Zin tilted his head, observing her reaction. "Good?" he asked telepathically. Emily nodded slowly, still unsure whether to trust him. Despite his calm demeanor, she knew she was far from safe. Over the next few hours, Zin stayed in the chamber with her, attempting to communicate. At first, it was difficult. Emily spoke aloud, forming words with her lips, while Zin responded only through thought. They struggled to bridge the gap between their languages, relying on gestures and visual aids projected onto one of the walls. Slowly, they began to understand each other better. Emily learned that Zin belonged to a species called the Krill, who traveled the stars in search of resources to save their dying planet. In turn, she told him about Earth, its oceans, forests, mountains, and cities teeming with life. Rax joined them occasionally, his presence more intimidating than Zin's. His questions were direct and probing. "Why do humans explore?" he demanded once, his mental voice sharp. Emily thought carefully before answering. "Because we're curious," she said simply. "We want to know what's out there." Rax seemed confused by this explanation, exchanging glances with Zin. Curiosity, to the Krill, seemed like an unnecessary luxury, a waste of energy when survival should be the priority. Despite the tension, Emily noticed subtle differences between the two aliens. Zin appeared genuinely interested in learning about her world, asking questions about music, art, and nature. Rax, on the other hand, focused solely on practical matters, such as Earth's technology and resources. This division became clearer when Rax mentioned something that sent a chill down Emily's spine. "Your planet has vast water reserves," he stated bluntly. "It could sustain us for centuries." Emily froze, her stomach tightening. She realized then why they had taken her, to gather information about Earth. And if they planned to exploit her planet's resources, it would mean disaster for humanity. Desperation filled her voice as she replied, "You can't take our water. Billions of people depend on it. It's not just yours to take." Rax stared at her, unimpressed. "Survival demands sacrifice," he countered. But Zin remained silent, his glowing eyes flickering with uncertainty. For the first time, Emily sensed a crack in their united front. Perhaps not all of them agreed with Rax's harsh methods. Later, as Zin escorted her back to the containment chamber, he lingered for a moment longer than usual. Using images rather than words, he showed her a memory, a barren landscape littered with ruins, skies choked with ash. It was his home, a place ravaged by drought and war. Emily felt a pang of sympathy but also resolve. She couldn't let them harm Earth, no matter how dire their situation. As the door closed behind her, Emily leaned against the wall, her mind spinning. She needed a plan, a way to escape and warn her people. But surrounded by advanced technology and powerful beings, hope felt distant. Still, she clung to one thought. She wasn't powerless. Somehow, she would find a way to fight back. In the command center of the vortex, Captain Kale stood at the helm, his glowing green eyes scanning the monitors displaying data about their human captive. The room buzzed with activity as crew members moved between stations, analyzing information and preparing reports. But beneath the surface of efficiency, tension simmered. The decision to keep Emily aboard had sparked a heated debate among the senior officers. Lieutenant Mara was the first to voice her concerns. A pragmatic and sharp-minded officer, she approached Kel with deliberate steps, her exoskeleton clicking softly against the metal floor. "Captain," she began, her telepathic words firm and direct, "keeping the human is a risk we cannot afford. If her species discovers our actions, they may retaliate. Humans are unpredictable, emotional, and volatile. Kale turned to face her, his expression unreadable. "And what do you suggest, Lieutenant?" he asked calmly. "That we release her and erase all evidence of our encounter, or perhaps destroy her vessel entirely." Myra hesitated but didn't back down. "Both options are better than keeping her here. Every moment she remains aboard increases the chance of complications. She has already begun influencing Zin. And if word spreads to other factions that we've captured a human, it could lead to conflict." Before Kel could respond, Dr. Vorin stepped forward. Unlike Myra, Vorin was driven by curiosity rather than caution. A xenobiologist by trade, he saw Emily as an unparalleled opportunity to study an intelligent species up close. "With respect, Lieutenant," Vorin interjected, his mental tone measured but passionate, "the value of this situation outweighs the risks. Humanity is unique, a species capable of both destruction and creation. Understanding them could provide insights we desperately need." Myra's mandibles twitched in irritation. "Insights won't save us if Earth sends warships after us. We're scientists, not conquerors. This isn't our purpose." Vorin's gaze hardened. "Perhaps it should be. Survival requires adaptation, not stagnation. If we ignore opportunities like this, we doom ourselves to extinction." The argument escalated, filling the command center with overlapping thoughts and emotions. Other crew members paused their work, glancing nervously at the growing rift between their leaders. Kale raised a hand, silencing everyone with a single gesture. His authority radiated through the room, commanding immediate attention. "Enough," he said, his voice cutting through the chaos like a blade. "This discussion ends now." He turned to face Myra and Vorin, his glowing eyes locking onto each of them in turn. "Lieutenant, your concerns are valid. We must proceed carefully. Doctor, your enthusiasm is commendable, but unchecked curiosity can be dangerous. I will make the final decision." For a long moment, Kale stood in silence, weighing the arguments. Finally, he spoke again, his tone resolute. "We will keep the human, for now, but she will remain under strict observation. No further contact unless absolutely necessary." "Understood." Myra bowed slightly, though dissatisfaction lingered in her posture. Vorin nodded eagerly, pleased that his research would continue. With the matter settled, the crew returned to their tasks, though the tension remained palpable. Later, Kale retreated to his private quarters, a small, dimly lit space where he often reflected on difficult decisions. He stared out at the endless expanse of stars, his mind heavy with doubt. Capturing the human had been meant to serve a greater purpose, to aid their survival, but now it felt like a gamble. What if Myra was right? What if this act of curiosity brought ruin instead of salvation? As he pondered these questions, a faint image of Earth flickered across one of the screens in his room. It was a recording taken during their initial scan of the human spacecraft, a blue-green orb floating peacefully in the void. Kale felt a pang of unease. For the first time, he wondered if they had made a grave mistake. Dr. Vorin spent hours each day in the containment chamber with Emily, determined to learn as much as he could about her species. He brought tools and devices, some of which hummed softly while others emitted faint glows. To Emily, they looked strange and intimidating, but Vorin's calm demeanor helped ease her nerves. He wasn't like Rax, cold and calculating. Instead, he seemed genuinely curious, almost childlike in his eagerness to understand. At first, their communication was slow and frustrating. Emily spoke aloud, forming words carefully, while Vorin responded through telepathic thoughts. They relied heavily on gestures and visual aids projected onto the walls. Vorin showed images of Earth's ecosystems, forests, oceans, deserts, and asked questions about how humans lived and thrived in such diverse environments. Emily answered as best she could, describing farming, cities, and technology. One day, Vorin brought a small, cute-shaped device that played sounds when activated. At first, it emitted soft clicks and whistles, noises familiar to the krill. But then, at Emily's request, it began playing music, a simple piano melody she recognized from her childhood. The notes filled the chamber, warm and soothing. Vorin tilted his head, his glowing eyes widening slightly. "What is this?" he asked, his mental voice tinged with wonder. "It's called music," Emily explained, smiling for the first time in days. "It's something we create to express feelings, joy, sadness, love. It's important to us." Vorin listened intently, replaying the melody several times. Then, unexpectedly, he shared something of his own. A series of rhythmic vibrations pulsed through the air, deep and resonant. It was alien yet strangely beautiful, like nothing Emily had ever heard before. She realized it was the krill equivalent of music, a form of artistic expression unique to their culture. For a brief moment, the barrier between them felt thinner, less daunting. As their sessions continued, Emily grew bolder in her questions. "Why are you so interested in Earth?" she asked one afternoon, watching Vorin closely. He paused, his mandibles twitching thoughtfully. "Our planet is dying," he admitted. "We have exhausted its resources. Without intervention, our species will perish. Your world, it is rich with life. We hope to find solutions there." Emily's stomach tightened. She had suspected as much, but hearing it confirmed made her feel even more trapped. "You can't just take what you need," she said firmly. "Earth isn't yours to exploit. Billions of people live there, families, children. If you harm our planet, you'll destroy everything." Vorin hesitated, his glow dimming slightly. "I do not wish to cause harm," he replied. "But survival demands difficult choices. My people are desperate." Emily shook her head, frustration rising in her chest. "There has to be another way. Taking from others won't solve your problems. It'll only create more." The conversation lingered in Vorin's mind long after their session ended. That night, he sat alone in his lab, replaying the human's words. He thought about the barren wasteland of his home planet, the skeletal remains of cities swallowed by dust storms. He thought about the billions of krill clinging to hope, praying for salvation. And he thought about Earth, the vibrant blue orb teeming with life, a stark contrast to everything he knew. For the first time, doubt crept into his mind. Was survival truly worth the cost of destroying another species? Could they find a solution that didn't involve exploitation? These questions weighed heavily on him, gnawing at the edges of his resolve. Meanwhile, Emily lay awake in her chamber, staring at the ceiling. Despite the breakthroughs in communication, she felt no closer to freedom. Every interaction reminded her of the stakes. If she failed to escape, Earth would face unimaginable consequences. Yet, she also noticed subtle changes in Vorin, and even Zin. They weren't monsters. They were individuals with fears and hopes, just like her. As sleep finally overtook her, Emily clung to one thought. If she could keep talking, keep sharing stories of Earth's beauty and resilience, maybe, just maybe, she could plant a seed of doubt strong enough to change their minds. Days turned into weeks aboard the vortex, and Emily found herself growing accustomed to the strange routine. Though she was still a prisoner, her interactions with Zin began to feel less like interrogations and more like conversations. Zin, who had been assigned as her primary guard, spent long hours watching over her in the containment chamber. At first, he kept his distance, standing stiffly by the door with his arms crossed. But over time, he started lingering longer, asking questions about Earth and sharing bits of his own life. One evening, as the ship's lights dimmed to simulate night, Zin brought Emily a small device that projected images onto the wall. It showed scenes from his home planet, vast deserts stretching endlessly under blood-red skies, skeletal trees clawing at the horizon, and ruins of once great cities swallowed by sand. The pictures were haunting, filled with both beauty and despair. Emily studied them quietly, her heart aching for the loss etched into every frame. "Was it always like this?" she asked softly, breaking the silence. Zin hesitated before responding, his mental voice tinged with sadness. "No. Once, it was green and full of life, much like your world. But wars, greed, and neglect destroyed it. Now, we fight only to survive." Emily nodded slowly, understanding the weight of his words. She thought about Earth, the lush forests, sparkling rivers, and bustling cities, and felt a surge of determination. Her planet wasn't perfect, but it was alive, vibrant, and worth protecting. "You don't have to take from others to fix what's broken," she said firmly. "There are other ways. Working together, finding solutions. That's how you rebuild." Zin tilted his head, considering her words. He didn't respond immediately, but Emily could see the flicker of doubt in his glowing eyes. For someone raised in a culture of survival at any cost, her ideas seemed foreign yet intriguing. Their bond deepened further when Zin secretly played recordings of Earth songs for her. One night, he brought a melody that reminded her of home, a soft guitar strumming accompanied by a gentle voice. Tears welled up in her eyes as she listened, overcome with longing. Zin watched her silently, his expression unreadable but oddly tender. When the song ended, Emily looked at him and whispered, "Thank you." Word of their growing connection spread quietly among the crew, causing unease. Lieutenant Mira observed Zin's behavior with growing suspicion. To her, his frequent visits to the containment chamber and his apparent interest in human culture were signs of weakness. She confronted him one day in the corridor, her sharp mandibles clicking in irritation. "You're spending too much time with the human," Myra said, her telepathic voice cutting through his thoughts. "It's affecting your judgment. Remember your duty, to our people, not hers." Zin straightened, meeting her gaze. "I am doing my job," he replied evenly. "But perhaps there is value in understanding her. If we learn from them, maybe we can avoid repeating our mistakes." Myra's eyes narrowed, and she leaned closer, her tone icy. "Be careful, Zin. Loyalty is fragile. Don't let emotions cloud your purpose." With that, she turned and walked away, leaving Zin alone with his thoughts. Despite the warnings, Zin continued to visit Emily, though he grew more cautious. He brought her drawings sketched on thin metallic sheets, images of Earth's landscapes based on her descriptions. In return, she taught him simple phrases in English, laughing gently when his pronunciation stumbled. These moments became a lifeline for Emily, giving her strength amid the isolation. Yet even as their friendship blossomed, Emily knew she couldn't stay forever. Each passing day brought her closer to making a decision. Trust Zin enough to help her escape or risk everything on her own. As she lay awake one night, staring at the ceiling, she realized something important. Zin wasn't just a guard anymore. He was an ally, however reluctant. And allies, no matter how unlikely, might be the key to saving both their worlds. Emily knew she couldn't stay on the vortex forever. Every day that passed brought her closer to the moment when the Krill might act on their plans for Earth. She couldn't let that happen, not while she still had a chance to stop it. But escaping from an alien ship wasn't simple, especially when she was constantly watched and surrounded by technology far beyond anything she understood. One evening, as Zin visited her in the containment chamber, Emily decided to take a risk. She had grown to trust him, at least a little, but this conversation would test that trust completely. Sitting cross-legged on the metal floor, she looked up at him with determined eyes. "Zin," she began hesitantly, "if I told you something important, would you listen?" Zin tilted his head, his glowing eyes flickering with curiosity. "What is it?" he asked, his telepathic voice calm but cautious. Emily took a deep breath, choosing her words carefully. "I need to get back to my people. If I don't, they'll never know what your crew is planning. And if they don't know, they can't protect themselves." Zin's expression shifted, his mandibles twitching slightly. He didn't respond right away, clearly weighing her words. Finally, he said, "You are asking me to betray my own kind." "No," Emily replied quickly, shaking her head. I'm asking you to help me save mine. And maybe yours too. If your people hurt Earth, it won't fix anything. It'll just make things worse. For everyone. For a long moment, Zin was silent. The hum of the ship's engines filled the room, underscoring the weight of Emily's plea. Then, slowly, he reached into a pouch strapped to his side and pulled out a small device. It was no bigger than her palm, sleek and metallic, with faintly glowing symbols etched into its surface. This, he said quietly, can disrupt the teleportation systems temporarily, long enough for you to reach your vessel. Emily stared at the device, her heart pounding. Why are you doing this? She whispered. Because you're right, Zin admitted, his mental voice tinged with uncertainty. Taking from others isn't the answer. Maybe there's another way. But using this will put us both in danger. Are you sure you want to do this? Emily nodded firmly, though fear coiled tightly in her chest. I have to try. They spent the next hour going over the plan. Zin explained how the device worked and where Emily needed to go to activate it. The teleportation bay was heavily guarded, so timing would be critical. Once the system was disrupted, Emily would have only minutes to locate her spacecraft and leave before the Krill regained control. Zin promised to create a distraction to draw attention away from her, giving her a slim window of opportunity. As they prepared, Emily felt a mixture of gratitude and guilt. Gratitude because Zin was risking everything to help her, and guilt because she knew his actions could cost him dearly. Before they parted ways for the night, she reached out and touched his arm gently. Thank you, Zin, she said softly. No matter what happens, I won't forget what you've done. Zin hesitated, then placed one of his clawed hands over hers. Just promise me one thing, he said. When you return to your world, tell them about us. Show them we're not all monsters. I will, Emily vowed, her voice steady despite the lump in her throat. That night, Emily lay awake, clutching the device tightly in her hand. Her mind raced with doubts and fears, but also determination. She thought about Earth, her family, her friends, the life she loved, and knew she couldn't give up. Tomorrow, she would fight for her freedom. And if she succeeded, she might just give both species a chance at a better future. The next day, tension crackled through the air aboard the Vortex. Emily waited anxiously in her containment chamber, clutching the small device Zin had given her. Every sound outside the door made her heart race. Footsteps, voices, the faint hum of machinery. She knew the plan had to be executed perfectly, or everything would fall apart. Zin arrived earlier than usual, his movements hurried but deliberate. His glowing eyes flickered with unease as he glanced around the corridor before stepping inside. It's time, he said quietly, his telepathic voice barely a whisper. The crew is distracted. I've created an issue in the engineering bay to draw them away. Emily nodded, trying to steady her trembling hands. She slipped the device into her pocket and followed Zin out of the chamber for the first time since her capture. The corridors were dimly lit, and the air felt colder away from the confines of her cell. Her footsteps echoed softly against the metal floor, each one feeling louder than the last. As they moved, Zin stayed close, guiding her with subtle gestures. They passed a few crew members along the way, but Zin's presence seemed to deter questions. No one suspected anything unusual about him escorting the humans somewhere. After all, it was part of his duty. Still, Emily's pulse quickened with every step closer to the teleportation bay. When they finally reached their destination, Zin stopped abruptly and turned to face her. This is as far as I can go, he said, his mental tone heavy with regret. From here, you're on your own. Activate the device near the control panel. It will disrupt the system long enough for you to find your ship. Emily looked at him, her blue eyes filled with gratitude and sorrow. Zin, thank you, she whispered, her voice breaking slightly. I mean it. I won't forget this. Zin hesitated, then reached into a pouch and pulled out a small object, a locket containing a holographic image of Earth's blue skies and green forests. He pressed it into her hand. "Take this," he said. "Remember what we talked about. Maybe someday our worlds can find peace." Before Emily could respond, alarms blared throughout the ship. Red lights flashed along the walls, casting an eerie glow over the corridor. Zin's expression hardened. "They know something's wrong," he said urgently. "Go now." Without another word, Emily sprinted toward the teleportation bay, her heart pounding in her chest. Inside, she found the control panel exactly where Zin had described. With shaking hands, she activated the device, pressing it firmly against the surface. The low hum filled the room, followed by sparks flying from the console. The teleportation grid flickered and died, plunging the system into chaos. Back in the command center, Lieutenant Mara stormed into the room, her sharp gaze locking onto Captain Kale. "The human has escaped," she exclaimed, her telepathic voice laced with fury. "And Zin is involved. I saw him leading her to the teleportation bay." Cal's glowing eyes narrowed, his jaw tightening. "Find them. Now." Meanwhile, Emily raced through the ship, following the route Zin had shown her. Her breath came in ragged gasps as she pushed herself harder than ever before. When she finally reached the docking bay, she spotted her spacecraft, still intact and waiting. Tears blurred her vision as relief washed over her. But just as she stepped onto the platform, a figure emerged from the shadows. Zin. His exoskeleton gleamed under the flashing red lights, and his expression was unreadable. For a moment, Emily froze, unsure if he'd come to stop her. Instead, he simply nodded toward the ship. "Go," he urged, his voice firm but kind. "Don't look back." Emily hesitated only briefly before climbing aboard. As the engines roared to life and the ship lifted off, she glanced out the window one last time. Zin stood there, watching her leave, his silhouette framed by the chaos of the alien vessel. Then, with a flash of light, she was gone. In the aftermath, Captain Kale confronted Zin, his disappointment evident. "You betrayed us," he said coldly. Zin lowered his head, but didn't deny it. "Maybe," he replied softly. "Or maybe I did what was right." Though Emily was free, the consequences of Zin's choice weighed heavily on everyone aboard the Vortex. Emily's spacecraft hurtled through the vast emptiness of space, its engines humming steadily as she set a course for Earth. Her hands trembled as she gripped the controls, her mind replaying the events that had led to her escape. She could still see Zin standing in the docking bay, his glowing eyes watching her leave. The memory brought both relief and guilt. Relief because she was finally free, and guilt because she knew what Zin had sacrificed to help her. Back aboard the Vortex, chaos reigned. Captain Kale paced the command center, his glowing green eyes blazing with frustration. Lieutenant Mara stood nearby, her sharp voice cutting through the tension as she reported the details of the breach. Zin disabled the teleportation systems and aided the humans' escape, she said coldly. His actions were deliberate and calculated. Kale turned to face her, his expression unreadable but heavy with disappointment. "Bring him here," he ordered, his telepathic voice firm and unyielding. Moments later, Zin was escorted into the command center, his posture stiff but his gaze unwavering. He didn't resist as two guards positioned themselves on either side of him, their towering forms dwarfing his own. The room fell silent, all eyes fixed on the young alien who had dared to defy his people. "Explain yourself," Kale demanded, stepping closer. His voice wasn't loud, but it carried a weight that filled the space. "Why did you betray us?" Zin met his captain's gaze without flinching. "I didn't betray us," he replied calmly. "I made a choice to protect our future. Taking from the humans wouldn't have solved anything. It would have only created more enemies, more destruction. We can't keep repeating the same mistakes." Myra stepped forward, her mandibles clicking angrily. "You speak of mistakes, yet your actions endanger us all. What happens when Earth learns of this? Do you think they'll forgive us?" They won't need to, Zin countered, his mental voice steady despite the rising tension. If we act wisely, if we show them we're not monsters, then maybe there's hope for peace. But if we continue down this path, we'll lose everything. The room fell silent again, the weight of Zin's words hanging in the air. Kale studied him for a long moment, his glowing eyes searching for cracks in Zin's resolve. Finally, he sighed deeply, his shoulders sagging slightly. Your intentions may be noble, but your actions have consequences. You will face judgment for what you've done. With that, Kale dismissed everyone except Zin, who remained standing alone in the center of the room. For now, he was spared punishment, but the uncertainty of his fate loomed heavily over him. Meanwhile, Emily reached her crew, who were stunned and relieved to see her alive. She recounted her harrowing experience aboard the Vortex, describing the aliens and their plans for Earth. Her teammates listened intently, their faces pale with concern. When she finished, one of them asked, "What do we do now?" Emily hesitated before answering. "We prepare," she said firmly. "But we also remember something important. There are good beings out there, even among the Krill. If we can find a way to talk to them instead of fighting, maybe we can avoid war." Her words lingered in the minds of her crew as they charted a course for home. Back aboard the Vortex, similar thoughts began to take root. Though divided, some members of the Krill crew couldn't ignore the seeds of doubt Zin had planted. Perhaps survival didn't have to come at the cost of others. Perhaps understanding, not conquest, was the key to saving their dying planet. As the two ships traveled in opposite directions, separated by light years of space, the ripple effects of Emily and Zin's choices spread quietly, unseen but powerful. The future remained uncertain, but one thing was clear: their actions had changed the course of both species forever. Weeks passed, and life aboard the Vortex settled into an uneasy rhythm. Zin's betrayal continued to cast a shadow over the crew, sparking debates that divided them more deeply than ever before. Captain Kale spent long hours in his quarters, staring at the stars through the viewport as he wrestled with the weight of leadership. He replayed Zin's words in his mind about peace, understanding, and the possibility of coexistence, but they clashed with centuries of Krill tradition. Survival had always come first, no matter the cost. Yet now doubt crept into his thoughts. Was there another way? Lieutenant Myra remained steadfast in her belief that Zin's actions were reckless and dangerous. She argued that humanity would never forgive or trust them after what had happened. "They'll see us as a threat," she insisted during one heated meeting in the command center. "And when they do, they'll retaliate. We can't afford to let emotions cloud our judgment." Dr. Vorin, on the other hand, found himself leaning toward Zin's perspective. The time he'd spent studying Emily had opened his eyes to the complexity of humans, their creativity, resilience, and capacity for compassion. "Perhaps it's not too late," he suggested cautiously. "If we reach out to them, show them we're willing to listen, maybe we can avoid conflict." Myra shot him a sharp look, her mandibles clicking in irritation. "You sound like Zin now," she snapped. "Do you really think they'll believe us? Trust us?" Vorin hesitated but didn't back down. "We won't know unless we try." The debate simmered unresolved, leaving the crew tense and uncertain. Meanwhile, Zin was confined to a small chamber near the lower decks, stripped of his duties and isolated from the others. Though technically under arrest, no formal punishment had been handed down. Captain Kale seemed unsure how to proceed, torn between enforcing discipline and acknowledging the truth in Zin's argument. Zin spent his days alone, reflecting on what he had done. At times, guilt gnawed at him. He had betrayed his people, broken their trust, and risked everything. But when he thought about Emily and the image of Earth she had shown him, he felt a quiet sense of purpose. If his actions could inspire even a small change in how the Krill approached survival, then perhaps it was worth it. Back on Earth, Emily worked tirelessly to warn her leaders about the Krill. She shared detailed reports of their technology, their dying planet, and their potential plans for resource extraction. Her superiors listened intently, their faces grim as they processed the gravity of the situation. Some called for immediate military preparation, fearing an invasion. Others urged caution, pointing out that not all aliens were hostile. Emily stood firmly in the latter camp. "Not every krill is our enemy," she explained passionately. "There are those who want peace, like Zin. He helped me escape because he believed in finding another way. If we prepare for war without exploring diplomacy, we might lose the chance to build something better." Her words resonated with some, though skepticism lingered. Still, a decision was made to send a message, a carefully crafted communication broadcast into space, inviting dialogue with the krill. It was a risky move, but Emily believed it was necessary. If nothing else, it might give Zin and others, like him, hope that humanity wasn't just a species to exploit, it was one worth working with. As the message traveled across galaxies, unnoticed by most aboard the Vortex, Captain Kale received unexpected news. A distant probe had detected unusual activity near Earth's orbit, a signal, faint but deliberate. When decoded, it contained a simple message: "We seek understanding, not conflict." Kale stared at the screen, his glowing eyes flickering with emotion. For the first time in years, he felt a spark of hope. Perhaps Zin had been right all along. Perhaps survival didn't have to mean destruction. It could mean connection. As he turned to share the discovery with his crew, he knew one thing for certain: the future of both species now rested on choices yet to be made. Months passed, and the ripple effects of Emily's escape continued to shape the destinies of both humanity and the krill. On Earth, preparations for potential conflict slowed as leaders chose to focus on diplomacy instead. The message sent into space had been a gamble, but it seemed to pay off. Though no direct response came from the Vortex, there were signs that the krill were listening. Ships near Earth's borders reported strange energy readings, brief flickers of alien technology, but nothing aggressive. It was as if the krill were watching, waiting to see what humans would do next. Aboard the Vortex, Captain Kale wrestled with the implications of Earth's message. He replayed the words in his mind over and over. "We seek understanding, not conflict." At first, he dismissed it as a trick, a ploy to buy time. But as weeks turned into months without any sign of hostility from Earth, doubt began to creep in. Perhaps the humans truly wanted peace, and if they did, could the krill afford to ignore such an opportunity? Lieutenant Myra remained skeptical, her sharp voice cutting through every discussion about diplomacy. "They're testing us," she insisted during one heated meeting, "waiting until we lower our guard so they can strike." Dr. Voren countered gently, his mental tone calm but firm. "Or maybe they're sincere. Maybe they've learned something from their encounter with us, just as we've learned from them." The debate went on, dividing the crew further. But slowly, subtly, opinions began to shift. More and more krill found themselves questioning the old ways, the endless cycle of taking and destroying. Zin's actions, once seen as betrayal, started to feel like an act of courage. Even Myra softened slightly, though she would never admit it aloud. Zin, still confined to his chamber, spent his days sketching images of Earth based on Emily's descriptions. He drew oceans shimmering under sunlight, forests alive with color, and cities glowing warmly against the night sky. Each picture reminded him of the fragile beauty of the human world and the responsibility he now carried to protect it. One day, Captain Kale visited Zin unexpectedly. The young alien looked up in surprise as the captain entered, his glowing green eyes steady but kind. "You were right," Kale said simply, his telepathic voice carrying a weight of regret and resolve. "Survival isn't worth anything if it comes at the cost of others. We need to find another way." Zin nodded, relief washing over him. "Thank you, Captain," he replied softly, "for believing." Kale didn't stay long, but his visit marked a turning point. Orders were given to alter the mission's course, not toward Earth, but toward uncharted regions of space, where resources might be found without harming other species. It was a risky decision, one that sparked murmurs of dissent among some crew members. But for many, it felt like a step toward redemption. Back on Earth, Emily kept the locket Zinn had given her close to her heart. She often opened it to gaze at the holographic image of her planet, remembering his sacrifice and the bond they had formed. When news reached her that the krill ships near Earth's borders had begun to retreat, she allowed herself a small smile. It wasn't victory, not yet, but it was a start. Years later, when humanity finally made contact with the krill again, it was under peaceful terms. Delegations met aboard neutral ground, exchanging knowledge and ideas. Among the krill representatives was Zinn, now older and wiser, his glowing eyes filled with quiet pride. And among the humans was Emily, her blue eyes reflecting the same hope she'd carried since the day she escaped. Though their paths had diverged, the connection they shared endured, a reminder that even in the vastness of space, understanding could bridge the widest gaps. Together, their two species began to forge a new future, one built not on fear or greed, but on trust and cooperation.